Bakersfield College on the 4th of July 2008. I'm Eartha Starr, and the United States is still a British colony. In the United States, Independence Day, commonly known as the 4th of July, is a federal holiday commemorating the adoption of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776. Americans celebrated independence on July 4th, the date shown on much publicized Declaration of Independence, rather than on July 2nd, the date of resolution. The independence was approved in a closed session of Congress. One of the most enduring myths about the Independence Day is that Congress signed the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776. The myth has become so firmly established that decades after the event, and nearing the end of their lives, even the elderly Thomas Jefferson and John Adams had come to believe that they and the other delegates had signed the Declaration on the 4th. Most delegates actually signed the Declaration on August 2nd, 1776. I too was always taught in school and in studying our history books that our freedom came from the Declaration of Independence and was secured by our winning the Revolutionary War. The first charter of Virginia in 1606, in the first paragraph, the King of England granted our forefathers license to settle and colonize America. The definition for license is as follows. In government regulation, authority is to some act or carrying on some trade of business in its nature lawful but prohibited by statute, except with the permission of civil authority, or which would otherwise be unlawful. That's in Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1914. Keep in mind, those that came to America from England were British subjects. Understand what I'm going to tell you here, the definition for subject and the definition for citizen. In monarchical government, by subject is meant one who owes permanent allegiance to the monarch. That's also in Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1914. Constitutional law, one that owes allegiance to a sovereign and is governed by his laws. The natives of Great Britain are subject of the British government. Men in free governments are subject as well as citizens. As citizens, they enjoy rights and franchises. As subjects, they are bound to obey the laws. The term is little used in this sense in countries enjoying a republic form of government. I choose to give the definition for subject first, so you could better understand what definition of citizen is really being used in American law. The definition of citizen from Roman law. The term citizen was used in Rome to indicate the possession of private civil rights, including those accruing under the Roman family and inheritance law and the Roman contract and property law. All other subjects were peregrines, but in the beginning of the 3rd century, the distinction was abolished and all subjects were citizens. The king was making a commercial venture when he sent his subjects to America and used his money and resources to do so. I think you would admit the king had a lawful right to receive, gain, and prosper from his venture. In the Virginia Charter, he declares his sovereignty over the land and over his subjects. And in paragraph 9, he declares the amount of gold, silver, and copper he is to receive if any is found by his subjects. There could have just as easily been none, or his subjects could have been killed by the Indians. This is why this is a valid right of the king. In Right of the Crown, in Black's 4th edition, the king expended his resources with the risk of total loss. In paragraph 9, the king declares that all his heirs and successors were also to receive the same amount of gold, silver, and copper that he claimed with his charter. The gold that remained in the colonies was also the king's. He provided the remainder as a benefit for his subjects, which amounted to further use of his capital. But not only this is valid, but it is still in effect today. If you will read the rest of the Virginia Charter, you will see that the king declared the right and exercised the power to regulate every aspect of commerce in his new colony. License had to be granted for travel, connected with transfer of goods, right down to the furniture they sat on. A great deal of the king's declared property was ceded to America in the Treaty of 1783. I want you to stay focused on the money and the commerce, which was not ceded to America. This brings us to the Declaration of Independence. Our freedom was declared because the king did not fulfill his end of the covenant between king and subject. The main complaint was taxation without representation, which was reaffirmed in the early 1606 charter granted by the king. It was not a revolt over being subject to the King of England. Most wanted the protection and benefits provided by the king. Because of the king's refusal to hear their demands and grant relief, separation from England became the lesser of two evils. The cry of freedom and self-determination became the rallying cry for the colonist. The slogan, "Don't tread on me," was the standard borne by the militias. The Revolutionary War was fought and concluded when Cornwallis surrendered to Washington at Yorktown. As Americans, we have been taught that we defeated the king and won our freedom. The next document I will use is the Treaty of 1783, which will totally contradict our having won the Revolutionary War. In the first paragraph, that the king refers to himself as Prince of the Holy Roman Empire. The United States did not negotiate this treaty of peace in a position of strength and victory, but it is obvious that Benjamin Franklin, John Jay, and John Adams negotiated a treaty of further granted privileges from the King of England. Keep this in mind as you study these documents. You also need to understand the players of those that negotiated this treaty. For the Americans, it was Benjamin Franklin, Esquire, a great patriot and standard bearer of freedom, or was he? His title includes Esquire. An Esquire in the above usage was a granted rank and title of nobility by the king, which is below knight and above a yeoman, common man. An Esquire is someone that does not do manual labor as signified by this status. Esquires, by virtue of their offices as justices of the peace and others who bear any office of trust under the crown, for whosoever studieth the laws of the realm, and who studies in the universities, who profess the liberal sciences, and who can live idly and without manual labor, and will bear and port charge in countenance of a gentleman, he shall be called master, and shall be taken for a gentleman. Esquire in English law, a title of dignity next above gentleman and below knight. Also a title of office given to sheriffs, sergeants, and barristers at law, justices of the peace, and others. This is found in Black's Law, Dictionary, 4th edition, page 641. Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and John Jay, as you can read in the treaty, were all esquires and were the signers of this treaty, and the original negotiators of the treaty. The representatives of the king was David Hartley, Esquire. Benjamin Franklin was the main negotiator for the terms of the treaty. He spent most of the war traveling between England and France. The use of Esquire declared his and the other British subjection and loyalty to the crown.